Hi guys, I'm Jenny and this is Life Take Two, where I share my harrowing escape from Mormon trad wife life. Today we're going to be talking about breakups, how heartbreaking they are and why maybe they shouldn't be quite so heartbreaking. But first, I have so many perpetual comments about my nail color because girl talks with her hands all the time that I've decided I will drop my nail color du jour in the very last few seconds of every video, so watch for that at the end. Next up, for those of you enjoying my cooking videos and begging for the recipes, I have resurrected my Mormon Trad Wife Facebook page called Down Home Healthy. You'll see my smiling face in the picture. Looks like this. I've brought that back just for you. Totally free. I'm not charging anything. I will be posting both my original and non-original recipes and all kinds of health tips and other stuff over there on that page. So go give it a follow for everything domestic goddess related. The main reason I'm called Life Take Two is that 6 years ago, last month, my 24-year marriage collapsed and I felt like my life had ended. And then trigger warning, decided to make sure that it ended. Thankfully survived that. Woke up in the hospital sometime later, feeling like Ron Howard had been filming a movie and had just yelled cut. And knowing that for me to be happy and move forward in life, I was going to have to shoot that second act in a way that was very different than the first. So that's my life take two right there. I got a second act that I hadn't anticipated having. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't 100% happy to have that second act because the first part of my life had failed so miserably. The breakup with my husband was so heartbreaking that I did not see how I could move on. And I honestly didn't believe that I could ever be happy again. And spoiler alert, here we are sometime mid-November. And I've been walking around all day, working, driving kids to school, taking care of things with a huge smile on my face, with music pumping in my earbuds and thinking, zippity doo dah, what a happy day this is. 6 years ago, I would have never anticipated that I could ever be happy at all. And yet, here we are. So I'd like to share with you a little bit of some of the foundationally messed up things that I had been taught throughout my life that led me to believe that I could never be happy again after the failure, in air quotes, with my nail polish. I'll tell you about at the end of my marriage. So first, a little bit of my worldview. I believed literally in Adam and Eve and a God who had made man and woman, and specifically one man for one woman, although that gets a little bit complicated with my Mormon religion. We're going to gloss over polygamy for this part of all of my videos. We're not going there. So I believed that God had handmade a soulmate for me and that somehow we would magically find one another on earth. And indeed I did. I met my husband. We married in the Mormon temple for time and all of eternity, period. Both my cultural upbringing and my religious upbringing were founded on the American nuclear family. And I deeply believed that I had only one soulmate and that he was supposed to be my partner throughout this whole entire earth life. So when he decided to leave me for a 19-year-old when I was 44 years old, I believed that that was my last chance at love, that I had just lost my Prince Charming. My soulmate was now going to be out there with somebody else. He's now happily married. I suppose it's also important to point out that in my very religious worldview, there was no option for happiness as a single cat lady. So my soulmate was gone. He left me and he was eventually going to marry somebody else. And I believed that neither the man without the woman nor the woman without the man, thus saith the Lord. So should I have to be single for the rest of my life, I deeply believed that that meant misery, absolute unhappiness. And yes, certainly in the months following my divorce, especially as I experienced post separation abuse from my partner and poverty, homelessness, all kinds of very negative, challenging things. Certainly in that first little very difficult bit after my marriage collapsed, I was very unhappy for obvious reasons. But then all of a sudden, as my life started to rebuild bit by bit, I found myself unbelievably as a single woman. And I want you to listen to this carefully because I wish somebody had told me this when I was married. I found myself as a single woman happier than I had ever been in my entire life. I can remember the first day that I felt this deeply to my core because it was so unexpected. I had always had this level of stress and just unhappiness and conflict in my relationship and just normal life stress of raising 5 kids and juggling their busy lives and things like that. I had always just had this feeling of tension from day to day. And then one day I remember I had grabbed my keys. I opened my front door of my little teeny apartment, which I would eventually lose. And just walking out the door, stepping onto the doormat, seeing the sunshine, feeling absolute peace, satisfaction, endorphins firing everywhere, and being surprised at it, thinking, well, this is weird. Am I supposed to feel like this? Lo and behold, it turns out that being a single woman was amazing, amazingly amazing. Then, eventually, I would meet my partner, Kevin. We have been together for several years. And the man I thought that I could never get over became nothing more than a pseudonym on my social media accounts, the bad guy in all my stories, and a couple of fake photos on my TikTok. He became just an empty space in all of my family photos. How could that possibly be? I thought that humans were supposed to mate for life. I thought that we had one soulmate. I thought that God made us an eternal companion. And if that didn't work out, then it was just misery and loneliness forever. Well, it turns out, according to all relational research, that humans are actually wired for what Esther Perel, a renowned clinical therapist as well as relational researcher, has labeled as serial monogamists. Monogamy to many people means one partner for life, but as Esther Perel has exhibited, it really should mean one partner at a time. We as humans have wondered for so long, like, what is the ideal relational pattern? Are we supposed to be polygamous like Moses, panamorous? Are we supposed to just, be perpetually stuck in a hoe phase? Are humans better suited for just partner swapping and free-for-alls? What is the ideal relational pattern for humans? And it is not a marriage contract for life. It is not that one partner forever till death do us part. Serial monogamy means that for most humans, we will have a handful of committed, monogamous, romantic partnerships throughout the course of our life. That is certainly true for me. I had a college fiance that I was with for several years. I thought that he was the one. A 24-year marriage. Now I've been with my beautiful partner for a handful of years. I don't know the future. Who knows what comes next? But here's what I do know. I spent a whole lot of time crying over this guy and thinking I couldn't even go on in life anymore because I had lost him and lost all that, when it turns out that my little human brain is hardwired to, yes, grieve and have some pain over that heartbreak, but then heal and fall in love again. And that I actually have the capacity as a Homo sapien to then have another long-term, committed, very loving relationship with somebody else. And should something happen to my sweet partner now, I will survive. I will either be a happy single person or there may be somebody else out there. I certainly hope we both live to be 100 and die in each other's arms, but none of us can control that. And that's not the story of most of our lives. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I never thought that my heartbreak would heal So the fact that I am currently in the single best relationship that I've even ever imagined, better than any of my friends, like it is literally magical all the time. Kevin and I are going to go into some of the reasons why. The fact that I'm in this relationship at all after the heartbreak of my divorce is absolutely stunning. I don't think it is stunning for those relationship experts who study human behavior, which leads to the next topic of conversation, and that is this. Our religious worldview is in pretty direct conflict to science and the understanding of how human beings behave. And one could speculate that entering into any type of a marriage contract at all is detrimental to living our most happy lives. If humans typically have between 3 and 5 intimate partnerships in a lifetime, due to just death or the dissolution of a relationship and other factors, maybe the failure of a marriage leading to termination and divorce shouldn't be such a boogeyman. It shouldn't be something that we fear at all. Maybe there shouldn't be pastors getting up in church on Sunday telling you to avoid it. Maybe it's not the failure of marriage at all that's the culprit, but the fact that marriage exists to begin with. You see, marriage is man-made. It was invented about the same time that we invented fencing and jumped from cultivation to agriculture and started wearing clothing and building societies with stratification status and rulers at the top. And it was created primarily for ownership purposes, specifically the ownership of the woman and any property or possessions that came with her and the ownership of the offspring that woman bore. It's not about relationships at all. And what it actually does is it turns our relationships into a transactionship. Because once we sign that piece of paper and we own this and that and something else, then we have a hard time sometimes seeing the people and connecting with them on an emotional level. I know that certainly happened for me. And I wish that I had had the ability to think about any of these things when I was a 19-year-old girl getting ready to get married. And I wish that I had known about any of this when this woman found herself suddenly divorced at age 44 and was looking around thinking, how did I mess up? I'm such a failure. This is horrible. I let my marriage collapse. When it turns out that that's exactly what we're hardwired to do, because the woman that I was at 44 was in no way the woman that I had been at 19, at 20, when I had gotten married. I had changed and grown and developed, and so had he. And while we may have been connectable in our 20s, we certainly were not in our 40s. And in many ways, I think that it's sad that I felt like I had to be stuck with that person just because I had signed a piece of paper that said that I would and made oaths in the temple and in front of our friends and commitments to God. To me, it's a lot like if that 19-year-old version of myself had bought a pair of jeans in 1995 and said, this is my pair of jeans forever. And from that point on, for the rest of my life, I was never able to change styles. Maybe I reordered the same pair every year, but I was stuck in that size and that style and that wash, which probably would have been acid washed Levi's or something from Charlotte Russe until I died. No, I would hate today to be wearing any of the jeans that 19-year-old Jenny would have picked out. As a 50-year-old woman, I have very different taste. Yet, that boy that I fell in love with was supposed to be mine forever. And why is it okay for us to change our taste in jeans or food or music or hair or whatever, but we can't change our taste in friends? And especially the person that we're going to spend a considerable amount of our time with. It's not okay for us to dive into that question because our entire society is built on the myth of marriage and specifically of the American nuclear family. I bought into that myth myself for many a year. And here I am on the other side. My partner, Kevin, and I, by the way, are filed as domestic partners. I kept my same last name. We have separate bank accounts. I teach all of my methods in my Manproof Your Life courses. We did have a church wedding slash commitment ceremony because he has Christian family and he himself is religious, so it was important to him. It was a commitment ceremony to me. And in our vows, we didn't promise till death do us part. We promised that as long as it was good, that we would be loyal and honor one another. And when it was over, that we would step out gracefully, showing one another the same level of respect and kindness that we had when we were in love. I regret that my husband of 24 years and I had not had a similar arrangement. I regret that when the marriage ended, that it broke my heart as much as it did, that I grieved so much the failure when I was just doing what humans do, which is transitioning, changing, maturing, and growing. It just makes me think that it's time for us to let go of the stigma and taboo and verbiage around the end of relationships. It's certainly not a failure. It's who we are. We outgrow genes. We outgrow one another sometimes, and that's okay. All right. And the nail polish this week is the Color Your Life Lavender Violets kit. It is the perfect sky blue. I love it with all my Arizona turquoise. It is this no name blue polish right here. Thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear in the comments, how many relationships have you had in your life? And have you experienced heartbreak?